So yeah, hi there, it's No Justice here, and I was following a lot of leftist commentary on social media due to this recent piece of news that's broken because of obviously lots of spending on coronavirus, the furlough scheme, things like that, PPE, obviously keeping businesses going, all the government grants they've been given out. The government debt has risen above 2 trillion for the first time. Now, I've seen a lot of people dunking over the Conservatives for this particular fact, because they spent a lot of time during the election season talking about how much better the Conservatives were with the economy, and because of this high debt, this highest debt of all time, etc., etc., a lot of people I've seen in leftist groups dunking on the Conservative Party for this reason, because it's a complete, it looks like they're being completely hypocritical or just outright lying about how good they are with controlling the budget and the actual national debt. Now, a lot of what this does is misapprehend what the actual debt means, okay? So what's important is to know the difference between deficit and debt. So you can see here, as the debt's increased over time consistently since 2004 here. So obviously the Conservative government starts here. So during both the Labour and the Tory governments, you can see that they've both increased. You can see the financial crash just about here, where the line goes up a bit further. Now, the budget is how much our country owes other countries in virtual reality money, but we'll skim over that, how meaningful that is in a moment. But what this does mean is that the debt has always increased under both governments, right? There's a little bit of dip here, but it's always increased, right? Now, what this is a result of the debt, of the actual budget deficit, which is how much in a year the government will spend more than they borrow, right? And as you can see here, as the debt has always increased, means the government has always been spending more than it has borrowed, which is why we had a deficit rather than a surplus, okay? Now, as you can see, it's kind of tailed off here, the rate at which debt is increasing, which means the deficit is getting lower. Now, what that means is that that's why you've seen a lot of talk about austerity over this period, where the Conservative government started and where we are now. The amount of money that the government's been spending has been much lower, because they've been cutting social programs, they've been selling off public assets for short-term gain. Now, what you are doing by laughing at the government over their high national debt, it's feeding into this rhetoric that the government should continue cutting till this goes to zero, until we have a budget surplus, and then we can start reducing the debt. Now, obviously, we know from our perspective that you can't, the short-term gain you get from selling selling off the public sector, as opposed to the amount in which you gain from having those things under public control and using the profits for the public's benefit rather than for the private sector's benefit. Now, that's the position that we have, rather than selling us for a short-term financial gain or for a long-term financial loss. But what you can't do is then mock the government over the debt increasing, when that is a symptom of the fact that we have a budget deficit. So all this does is push the Conservatives to continue to cut until this reaches zero. So it's not there's not the dunk that you think it is. Now, I understand that dunking on Conservatives is a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing that on my channel as well. The problem is that you have to do it in a manner that's actually conducive for the politics that you espouse, and this isn't, right? Like, countries don't operate with budget surpluses. Look, this is a list of all country budget surpluses for top 200 countries, right? Now, where it stops becoming a surplus and starts becoming a deficit, only at 43. So it means only 20% of these countries actually run a budget surplus, right? Like you look at the other countries on here, like countries like Japan. This is quite a while back, to be fair. I think this was 2013. It doesn't say, but either way, this is 2013. Yeah, it says on the right here. Now, a lot of these are island nations, or if you can see from here, like places like Qatar and Libya and Kuwait, places with lots of oil. Norway. So obviously that's where a lot of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, these kind of places, they have a lot of oil. Obviously, it's funnily enough, especially in places like Norway, it's owned by the government. So that's why the government budget surplus is so high. It's because they make a lot of money off the oil they sell, which goes with the profits, get put back into the public purse, and we get to spend that on public services that everyone can use, unlike in some of the countries where it's owned by private interests, and all the money they gain from the oil industry just gets put into the pockets of the oil billionaires that get kowtowed to by governmental policy. So yeah, clearly, if having a big budget deficit and therefore increasing your national debt was a problem, why would all these countries would have collapsed by now, right? And why this 2 trillion figure is kind of illusory and doesn't really mean much in the traditional sense. So by continuing to feeding into this rhetoric that this is a problem, all you're going to lead to is more austerity, more cuts. As at the end of the day, the Conservative Party doesn't exist as a means with which to make the country better. The Conservative Party exists as a means to win elections for the Conservative Party. And if we continue this rhetoric, we push forward this rhetoric that we have to reduce the budget deficit, we have to reduce the national debt, to reduce the debt, to turn the deficit into a surplus, all that will happen is the Conservatives, to win the ground on this rhetorical argument, will just continue to cut and continue to make our lives worse as the working class by reducing the public sector that we have and make it harder for us to then go back when we get back into power eventually. And hopefully the Labour Party will do sometime in the next 4 to 8 years, that it will end up at a point at which we can then start renationalising things and get to the point where we can generate budget surpluses by investing in investing in public infrastructure, which is going to bring in revenue for the government, rather than the short-term financial gain that you get, the Conservatives have seen, by selling off public assets to the private sector. So yeah, just at the end of the day, there's a real optical argument to be had in the way we rhetorically engage with the Conservatives and right-wing people in general, or people who have right-wing views at the moment, is we have to change their attitudes in the way they view electoral politics, which we can't do if we fight the battles on the battlegrounds that the Conservative Party want us to. We have to fight those battles on our own terms and change people's opinions that way, is my personal opinion. Please let me know what you think about this in the comments below. And yeah, fingers crossed we can use this to our advantage moving forward.